Hello and welcome to Business Today Television. I'm Siddharth Zarabi, and with me at the GoaFest is Priyanka Gill, co-founder Go. Welcome, Priyanka. And the backdrop for our conversation really is this big gathering of the ad world. Before I get into sort of more specific things, what are you picking up in terms of how the latest trends as far as media and advertising are concerned here from GoaFest, Priyanka?
It's very, firstly, thank you for having me. GoaFest is exuberant. There's a lot of activity happening. There are a ton of people here. So I think the mood in the industry seems quite upbeat. And I think looking at the volume of activity I've witnessed here, it can only get better.
Okay, since you spoke about the mood, I'm going to talk about the mood of startups. A bit of a cloud, and someone would say no dark clouds, lots of heavy rain, a bit of a storm. What is your own reading of whether you would call it a startup winter or a bit of a rainy day?
You know, I think it's interesting because your question is pegged on the backdrop that was 2021, right? 2021 was an exuberant year where unprecedented amounts of funding entered the system. And it was not the norm, right? And now I think we are back to a correction from there, and which is why it's feeling like, you know, it's a startup winter, etc. I was just listening to Rajan Anandan of Sequoia speak in the session before our talk. And early stage startups, mid-stage startups are finding funding quite easily. Late stage startups, their funding success is predicated on whether they're profitable or not. And for late stage startups, he mentioned 4 priorities. I'll make it 5 priorities. There are only 5 priorities today. Profitability, and you say that 5 times. And that is pretty
much...
The 5 Ps. Literally, those are the 5 Ps that only matter. And for every late stage founder out there, that's all we focus on. That's all we're looking at. Because that is going to be the decider for how successful your company ultimately is going to become.
If it's a shakedown that's happened, and it's happened because of global factors, the India growth story, the India consumption story, broadly in macro terms is only moving in one direction.
Yes.
Now, there are pockets of weakness for specific reasons. So, would it be fair to say that Indian startups are being tested because of developments overseas rather than the Indian market, and they would therefore, perhaps some of them would still end up making mistakes chasing growth over profitability?
I mean, you say shakedown, I say correction. So
okay.
It's a little bit of a term.
Well, I could use stock market lingo all the time, but you said it right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it's a correction in the market is what's happening right now in terms of funding that's coming into the startup ecosystem. Interest rates from 0 have gone up to like 6% globally, right? And that, of course, is going to have an impact on capital available across all the sectors, and it does trickle down into the startup ecosystem as well. And as you said, Indian consumer funding is only on the up. If you're looking at GDP per capita, we are crossing the 2,500, which is kind of a magical watershed mark that was there in terms of all startups when you look at what would happen in the future. And we've just crossed that right now. So I think in the long run, the future is extremely bright. For startups specifically, is going to be getting to profitability, as I mentioned. And once you get there, I mean, the stars are literally the limit for us then.
As you discovered the Indian consumer and served his needs over several years in the segment that you operate, what are the top 2-3 discoveries that are really important for you now versus the time you started off?
So, you know, at the Glamms Group, as you know, we make beauty and personal care products across our 5 brands. And we cover all segments of the market, be it women, young women, which is older women, mother and baby, and all the way through, right? And the one commonality that you find is that the Indian consumer is extremely value conscious. But that does not mean that they will compromise on quality. So as a brand, our responsibility is to find that sweet spot between the two. How do you maintain value consciousness for the consumer while still delivering the best quality to them? And even from a consumer demand perspective, So the consumer of today is as educated as any consumer in the world. They have access to the same social media. The aspirations are the same. So a little girl or a young woman sitting in Bombay or sitting in Surat actually is accessing the same aspirations as she might be sitting in New York or in Brooklyn out there, right?
What about India's men, the young ones, the middle-aged ones? What do they search and look for when it comes to personal care?
I think there's a big need gap where men's grooming products are concerned. India generally is actually a very brand poor country for a population of our size. On the women's segment, a lot of startups, a lot of brands have come forth in the past few years, and we've really met the gap out there. When you're looking on the male grooming side, I do feel that it is an opportunity. And at the Good Glamm Group, we've always said that that's a big opportunity for us as well.
And what are you doing about it?
So we've just announced a JV with Akshay Kumar, and something interesting is basically going to come out of there. Of course, that will be in kind of focusing on men as well. And yeah, it's a huge opportunity, and we need to cover that.
We'll wait for those details, but I want to ask you a related question, and this is in the Indian context. Beauty has two components, and I hope you will agree with my question, because the one part is Ayurveda, which is not available in many countries across the world. You could use another word for it, which is local cultures and age-old treatments. And then there is, of course, the global kind of beauty paradigm. We've seen certain companies, including Patanjali, for example, do quite a bit in that. How do you see this Ayurveda segment? What's the future there? And is there some sort of trade-off that you as a seller have to do between these two different segments?
So look, I think in the beauty, I take your question. So on one end, you have, say, Ayurveda, you have natural, and then you have doctor-led brands, and then you're going towards efficiency, right? So at one end is nature, and one end is kind of cosmeceuticals. So that's kind of the spectrum within which pretty much all beauty and personal care brands sit. So we, for example, have a brand called Organic Harvest, right? Which is actually certified to be organic. So there we basically say that natural is an oft-used word. It's often misused, right? But what we're actually trying to propose to the audience is certified organic, which is actually good and pure for you. That is ratified by a third-party agency as well.
And who picks that up? Who are the buyers for certified organic in terms of,
I think
if you were to profile them as consumers?
I think it's, again, as I said when we spoke, the Indian consumer is value conscious, but she also wants value for her money, and her demands are big, right? So she wants natural product, but she's no longer okay to say, ek boond nimbu dalo to natural ho gaya, right? That's what a lot of brands basically sell you. So with Organic Harvest, we're shifting the conversation to saying, hey, not just one drop of lemon, but it's actually a certified organic product that's really good for you, because it's actually certified organic and does not have any nasties in there.
So the natural segment is maturing. Is that what you're saying?
It's absolutely maturing. And I think the stakes are getting raised. You cannot just bandy the term natural and get away with it right anymore, because the consumer is getting more and more aware. And it's brands like Organic Harvest that are actually educating the consumer. And as a result, the consumer is demanding more, right? And as I said, the table stakes get raised, and the consumer wins, and the brands who are making the right moves also win.
Priyanka, you spoke about the 5 Ps. And I'm going to throw that question at you. What's your part to profitability? How are things looking like? What numbers can you share with us, top of head?
So look, at the Good Glamm Group, 2021 was a very, very exciting year.
Peak digital.
Peak digital. And we did well. We managed to raise $250 million in the year. We acquired 10 companies in that year. We built an entire content creator commerce community ecosystem where we had beauty and personal care brands, that we had our digital media brands, of which I'm the CEO, PopXo, Scoop Poop, Miss Malini, Tweak, right? And then we created a creator ecosystem where we put together a whole bunch of influencer companies, and then, of course, a community stack that we're building out right now. So 2021 was a great year. 2022 was a year of consolidation, where we put together all of our acquisitions and really made sense of what the group is going to feel like. 2023 is about getting to profitability and really kind of using the flywheel that we have built and optimizing it so we basically are able to hit profitability. So literally that's the path for us, and that's the single-minded focus that we have at the Good Glamm Group. And it's true for us, it's true for every other late-stage startup out there.
Consequently, would it be right to say that you will go public only after becoming profitable? We've seen examples of the other kind, but what sort of example will you set when it comes to going public?
Oh, absolutely, right? That's actually the only way that you should be looking at approaching the public markets, because that's a base level where you need to be at. And public markets really reward predictability, right? So when a company is doing predictable business quarter on quarter on quarter, only when you're comfortable about doing that, that is when, at least in my opinion, you need to be approaching the public markets.
So until the time, and I don't know what your sort of internal targets are when you are net profitable, how's the funding runway looking like? You mentioned a number of $250 million. Between that and whenever that IPO happens, whenever you go public, or you may not choose to, that's your call. What's the fundraising pipeline looking like?
Look, honestly, we are backed by marquee investors,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And our investors have huge confidence in what we are doing right now. So we are in a much better position than most, maybe other startups out there. We managed to raise a sizable amount of money when the funding was a little bit more available back then.
And at better valuations, I guess.
And at a great valuation.
Great.
And I think that's put us in a very strong position right now. So thank God for that.
Good. And does it also mean that you'll wait out for the downturn before you go out to top up your kitty?
See, look, honestly, all of these are moving kind of conversations that happen all the time.
Okay.
So I wouldn't kind of commit to
I
one thing
respect that.
either way.
I respect
But the really great thing is, as a company, as the Good Glamm Group, we are extremely confident about our path and trajectory ahead. And we have a very, very clear goal in mind, and super excited to be building towards that.
Wonderful. Let's come back to the context backdrop where we are. On this very seat, I've had, old behemoths, financial behemoths sit here, advertising gurus come and talk. And I'm going to ask you, as a startup and as a glamorous startup, if I may say so, how do you look at the media space? Traditional media, print, television, digital, within that various verticals. There are certain startups who have told us in the past, we just want to be digital first. We'll be only social. We don't want to go everywhere. Old media is dead. How does Priyanka Gill answer this question?
See, look, I've been a digital media entrepreneur for over 10 years now. That's how I started my journey, because I started a platform called PopXO.
Yes.
So I've seen the digital media space evolve over the past decade now. And I've seen various fads and phases come and go. So there are certain truths that exist about the market today. Number one, the consumer is online. Like, that's a given, but that has to be said. So the consumer is a digital consumer right now. Number two, the consumer is consuming content everywhere, right? They are obviously on social media, they are consuming content. OTT is becoming a big play. Television still has consumers basically out there. So it is still an omni-channel consumer that you have, right? It is
with
not
the bulk of it on social?
Bulk of it on social, because that's literally the mobile phone is your access, your gateway to the consumer.
So the stack is social, followed by websites, followed by what? Is that the right way to look at it?
Social is pretty much the largest stack that you have out there, right?
Okay.
So it's a digital first consumer, and any brand, any platform that doesn't recognize that, in my point of view, they're missing it, right? What I have seen happen is that access to consumers is becoming more and more expensive for brands, right? Brands might have the product, brands might have their sales channel, they might have the distribution funnel, everything might be set. But for a brand to access consumers, it's very expensive, because every time they want to reach out to the consumer, they have to pay someone.
Will ONDC change that, Priyanka, or will that have any correlation with the expense point that you just made?
See, CAC has been the biggest pain point. Cost of customer acquisition has been the biggest pain point for all brands. At the Good Glamm Group, we managed to solve that by putting content and commerce together, which is why PopXO and MyGlamm work so beautifully together, which is why we have the Good Media Co. and we have good brands working together. So we have 250 million monthly active users at the Good Glamm Group. that is the top of the funnel for us, right? And those are people that we access directly through content, through creators, which gives us an incredibly strong moat, because they then funnel down to our brands, and then they become buying customers for us.
Wow, I'm going to interrupt you here, viewers, because understand this and compare it to what a company founder 20 years back would have said. Customers were almost like a third party thing for him. And what Priyanka is saying, customers are within the operation, and reaching the customer through content and all the associated explanation is also part of your business
that
strategy.
is a flywheel. It's content, creator, commerce, and community. So because we own all parts of the funnel, we don't have to pay a third party to access the customer.
Okay, that's not good news for media if you don't pay a third party.
I mean, good media is all about media. We work with external brands as well. So third party brands come to us, and as a media company, I work with all of them too.
Okay.
Right? So, but for the Good Glam Group, that is our flywheel. And I think in many ways that is going to become the future. You're looking at a lot of investment that traditional brands and new age brands are trying to make within the content universe as well. You heard of all the acquisition that happened in the past 2 years there. We did a lot of them too. But I think that is the future where brands recognize that they want to have direct access to the customer without having to pay a third party.
Final question, or almost the final question, is the age of the boardroom an issue in understanding the whole digital ecosystem that you spoke about?
I mean, age is quite a touchy topic, but I think that, look, our boardroom is very young, right? I mean, I would be at the older end of the spectrum there. So I think it's also an openness and a willingness to absorb new technologies and new ideas. More than age, I think that openness basically matters more, right? I spend time with a lot of folks, but their capacity to learn at every stage of their life is there, right? And that basically, I think, is the difference between someone who might age out of the system in terms of thinking and someone who might actually innovate based on opportunities that happen in the market.
Okay, really final question. If we were to wind the clock back, and you know that we can't do that, what would be that one thing that you would have done very, very differently when you started off?
Nothing, actually. I mean, I find myself privileged to have had the journey that I've had. It's been hard at times. It's been very hard at times, but I really wouldn't change anything, because I think it's all led up to this moment where I'm having this wonderful conversation with you. And overnight success is usually a decade or more in the making, and which has been my experience. Good Glam Group is just over 2 years old right now. And what we've done as a Good Glam Group is a result of what I did at PopExo, what Darpan did at My Glam, what Naya did at Baby Chakra. All of that kind of came together to this. So yeah, I wouldn't change anything. I would just say that it's a fantastic moment to be an entrepreneur in India. And the future is only going to get better.
Wonderful. Priyanka, I really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you very much for your time. That was Priyanka Gill, co-founder of Good Glam Group, talking to us about a whole lot of things in the ecosystem that she works for. If you've been, thank you very much for watching.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.